Welcome back to another Action Game Maker tutorial. Today I'm going to talk about how to add animations to your objects. With that said, let's get started. Alright, so we're in a minimal project here where I want to add a player object, just a minimal one that can walk and move and jump. And so in order to do that, we got to add a new object. So the first thing we need to do is we need to understand how we're going to organize things. And if you come from Pixel Game Maker, I know I've showed this in my other videos, but just to reiterate, you have these different tabs on top. And so you have an objects tab, and this is where you have a player object. Now, this player object right here, you can think of it as a container that holds your action programs via this tab. It also holds your basic settings, and it also holds your move and jump settings, and so on and so on. So you can think of this as a container or a folder for all these other things that are associated with it. We can do the same thing in Action Game Maker. We can actually just make a parent objects folder, and then in there we can actually create our subfolders as the objects like we would in Pixel Game Maker. I'm going to create this folder, and this is going to be for the player. I'm going to hit OK. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is inside the player, I have some sprites that I want to be associated with them. So I'm just going to make a folder called sprites. Now this is the only thing where it kind of differs from Pixel Game Maker, because in Pixel Game Maker, you would make an animation in the Animations tab, and then you would apply it on an object. Well, in this case, we're actually applying the animations in the objects themselves with Action Game Maker. So you can actually consider it, the Animations tab is one of these sub-tabs of an object. So that's why I'm adding in the sprites in there, instead of like a resource folder, which you could, but this just helps me stay organized like Pixel Game Maker did. And so I have my sprites here. So I'm going to go to my sprites. And they're just these three sprites right here. Now with the folder selected, I'm going to drag them in and they will just import automatically. There we go. So I have the weight. You can preview them right here as well. And it's nice because you can get the size if you ever need the sizes for anything. So here's the weight one, just a looping move, and then an air for jumping. Now the next thing we need to do is create the actual object for it. So I'm just going to go over here to the plus. We're going to create a game object. I'm going to name this player. It is a character. I'm going to say it's a player character. It moves by input. And then I don't want to add any light or shadows to it yet, so I'm just going to leave this blank. So now I'm just going to hit create. And so now I have a player object. Now I like to save it right away, so I press Control S. I'm going to select Objects Player, and I'm going to save it as my player TCN. And then now we can see that we have the same kind of setup as the PGM, where we have these, a basic settings tab, a move and jumping tab. Now we have these right here where we can set our stats. So that's just kind of an overview. Now we specifically want to make animations. So the first thing that you have to do to set up animations is I'm going to scroll in here, and then we click on this owner. The top node of a scene is called the owner. And we're going to hit Control A. Additionally, you can also right click and say add child. And additionally, you can just click this button right here. And then we're going to type in that we want an animation player. This is something that is required for all objects. You can see that if you click on the owner, it requires an animation player. I'm going to go ahead and click this. You can see that we can select the only one that's on this scene. So we can select it that way. Another way that we can do it is we can actually just drag it. That's the wrong one. We can drag the animation player just like that onto it. Either way works. You can see we have some animation set options right here, but we don't need to use this quite yet. We actually have to set up the animation player first. Now, in order to do that, we actually need a sprite now. I'm going to click and I'm going to add a sprite. So now we have the Sprite2D, and it's got some properties over here that we can set. But first we want to go to the animation player, and then there's an animation tab right here. If it happens to be down, you can just click on it, pops back up. I'm going to bring this up a bit because we're going to need some room. We're going to click animation, and we're going to create a new animation. So this is going to be the first animation we want to make, which I'll just say it's the idle, or wait in this case. So we'll just say wait. And we got a few things that we need to do here. The first thing we need to do is we need to set keyframes on this. Kind of like how we would in Pixel Game Maker, where we would say wait right here, and then we would have keyframes right here that we would set, and it would ultimately make the waiting pose. It would go back and forth. These keyframes are going to be very similar for Action Game Maker. But in order to set a keyframe, you need to have the property of what you want to set selected. So in that case, we want to go to the Sprite2D because those are where we want the sprites to come from. And you can already see some keyframes right here. These are keyframes. If you don't have animation tab open, you can see the keyframes go away. So with the animation tab open, you can key anything into this current animation that you have, which is right now wait. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to get a texture in here. Now we can go like this, we can say quick load, we can search a texture like this, or just like normal, you can just bring it in just like this, and there you go. So we have a few different things going on here. The first thing is we can see our grid, and so we can see that the floor is right here. So, or an easy way to keep track of your floor is this horizontal line. So I like to bring mine up to that horizontal line. You can easily do that by clicking on the offset right here, and then you can, in AGMaker, you can click on this and you can drag it up. So you can drag it up and see where it goes, and then you can round it 17, and that's about where it would go. I want her feet on this line so that I always know where her feet are when I am making detections and things like this. All right. So I'm still setting this up before we go into keyframes. I'm going to go to animation here. This is where you set the horizontal frames. Now, I will tell you that strips are the easiest things to use in Godot. Sprite sheets, those big sprite sheets, they get complicated really quick. I would recommend strips if you don't already have them in strips. But we know that the horizontal thing is 3 on this one. And if we wanted to, we could bring the offset this way a little bit to more even out her horizontal look, which I'll just do just to show that you can do it for each animation, basically. And so now we have this pretty much set up. The only thing we don't have is keyframes. So we need to be very specific what this animation takes. So first thing that it takes is it takes this texture, okay? So I'm going to, you can click it, and then you can create. And now we have the texture keyframe of it. So the next thing that we need to do, since we changed this offset here, is we need to create a key here. Now, one shortcut is you can hold shift and you can left click and see that it brought down the offset keyframe right here. The next thing that we need to do is we need to bring the horizontal frame. Then we need to bring the vertical frame. Now, we didn't change the vertical frame, but some of your other strips might have a different vertical frame. So I always bring both of them down. The other thing too that happens quite a bit is that you might have one sprite sheet or strip facing right, but another sprite sheet facing left. Now, you're going to want to make sure that they're all facing right, because that's how Godot handles rotation the best, is when everything's facing right. So I'm just going to click on this one, and I'm going to save it as if it's right, because we might have another one that's left, but I want to make sure this one's right. And since I did these out of order, this is a good time to talk about ordering when you're setting up animations. The order matters, and you want to go from the most top property to the bottom. And so because of that, I need to put my H flip key frame that I need to put it right below the offset, but above the H frames. So I'm going to drag that just like that. And now it's in the proper order, because this really matters to show these sprites correctly sometimes. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is actually go to the frame themselves. So you can see right here, we have the frame. We can go up like this, and we can see that we're changing the frames right here. Okay, so we're going to start with 0, and I'm going to control zoom in on this time frame a little bit. And we're going to shift click on this key. When you shift click, it goes to the next frame. So you can literally just keep shift clicking until there's no more frames, or you get this line down here, which means that you've duplicated a bunch of frames. So now I'm going to select them all and delete them. And then we're going to move one over like this. And then over here is the actual total time. I'm going to change it to 0.1. Now we have the total time is 0.1. This little button right here puts it on repeat. This button right here puts it on to a back and forth flipping. If you were to do back and forth flipping, you would want to end it right here at this last frame so that this chunk of time is its time. You wouldn't want it to end. It would make this frame last longer than it should. And then if nothing is selected, then it's just going to play until it's done. So if we loop it and we pray, we can see that this is playing rather fast. So we need to definitely change that. I'm going to pause that. And then I'm going to come down here to this time thing right here. This is how much time it is between each frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this at 0.12, I think is a good amount. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to adjust this as well. So one easy thing that you can do is if you know the frame count, you can say 0.12 times 3. And then that will give you your time length. And then you just grab these frames and put them where they're supposed to be. And then that looks a lot better. It's still a little too fast. I would probably go a little slower, but that looks good for now. Okay, so now we've set up our first animation wait. Now we want to set up another animation. So quite frankly, since we have a good setup right here, I'm actually just going to duplicate this animation and I'm going to call it a move. This will be its moving, right? And so now all we got to do is we got to just change a few things. So you can do things like this. You can click on the keyframe and you can change out the properties this way. Matter of fact, this is going to get a whole lot easier in a new version of Godot coming out because they actually update in real time. Right now, they don't update in real time. So if I drag the move into here, you can see that it doesn't update in real time. I have to start playing it before it will update. But in the next Godot version, it's going to update in real time. So I probably will use that keyframe a lot, or I will probably adjust it in here a bit more than I normally do. But another way that you can do it is you can just go back to the sprite and we can say, you know what, this one has different H frames. This one has 4, or no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one has 5 instead of 3. So I'm going to change it to 5. Now, this is where it might get a little confusing at first. If you change this to 5 and you don't click on the keyframe again, you will lose it when you start to play. So you can see that you just lost it, and that's because you didn't save it on the keyframe. So we need to go to 5 right here, and that looks pretty good. One thing is we need to bring the offset back to 0 maybe, or maybe let's just do -1. Yeah, that looks good. And so we need to change that. So I'm going to shift left click that, and so now that is changed as well. And one thing is that we are, actually, did I not save that one? Nope, I didn't. I'm going to hit 5, enter, and shift click this a bunch of times so that I make sure that it happens. And it looks like it took it. All right. Now we're going to go like this, and we are skipping some frames. So we need to make sure that we're getting all the frames in. So with the walking, I want to turn it to 0.1. And then since I know we have 5 frames, times 5, basic math, but that's fine. And I'm going to go to sprite here, and you can see we're back at 0 frames. I'm going to, the reason why is because I went back to 0 on the timeline, just so you know. If I was right here, it would show longer. But now that all my time is changed, my sprite frames don't match up with the line. So I need to delete these ones, go back to the original, right? Then I'm going to hold shift click, and I'm just going to keep clicking until they're all in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that looks good. If we play test this, I think this one's set up to actually go back and forth. So if we go to 0.4 here, we're going to change this to 0.4, and we're going to change this to back and forth. And there we go. More setup like that. Okay. Now, one thing that might get people is you might change a property while your time frame is right here. So for example, let's just say that, I change it to, well, I don't know. Let's just say I have a keyframe right here, and you might be, this line means that it's the same, but let's just say it wasn't, and I wanted that one to be replaced. I could easily grab this keyframe and move it there and replace it. So there are a lot of options actually with animation players. So this is kind of the most basic to make you feel the most comfortable coming from a PGM background. Okay, so now that we got the move one out of the way, let's do our last one, which was air. And this one was just a simple animation, except for I'm not going to create a new one. I'm still going to duplicate it because it comes with all the properties that I want to set. And so I'm going to duplicate it, call it air. And then I'm just going to delete all of these. I'm going to set it to maybe a 0.1, that's fine. No back or anything. And then the thing is I'm going to go here under texture. I'm going to, I'll just search for it to show you this way. A quick load. I'm going to go to air. Boom, air's in. It takes 5 H frames, which is good. We do have we need to select the correct right here. So let's just go up like this. And that looks good. So I'm going to shift click this one to be the only frame. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about. I accidentally did it while I was right here. And so what I can easily do is I can just drag this frame over here and it will replace it. So now we have this, except for I didn't save something here. I didn't save the texture. So let's go back here, quick load, air, shift click that. Let's see, yep, shift click that one. And then we can change the offset on this one as well. So let's go back to, let's go like this maybe, do -5. And then let's go down a little. Let's do -16. And then all I got to do is just make sure that I shift clicking it so that it's all changed. And boom, we got this animation now. So all our animations are done. Now we can go and we can set them up for the visual scripting. So we got to go to player right here. We go to our animation sets, which are right here. And now we're going to go down to bulk load. And you can see that it bulk loaded the animations that we set up. So if I unload all these, we can see that we have the air animation. It also sets it up for left and right because it automatically does that. It also set up the move with left and right, and then the wait. And what I mean by that is this is the name for what your visual scripting is going to look for when you're looking for animations. This is the actual animation. So if we go down here, we see we have a reset, air, move, wait. This one has the same thing, air, reset. So this is the actual list of animations. And then this is where you can toggle what direction it is. And by default, it does left and right because flipping is left and right too. Notice that I didn't need to specify a left air and a right air, a left move and a left and a right move. It specifies it in here and it automatically flips it. So that's really cool. Now, if you had an animation that you really needed a specific one, you'd have to add a left and right one. You'd add one as the right, and then you'd add another one as the left. And then you would select the proper animation for that. So there is ways around this, but this bulk set is nice because most of your animations are going to be like this, especially if you're making a platformer. And so, yeah, this is really cool. So now, how do we actually apply this to use in our visual scripting? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to go up to the player, and we need to right-click and attach a script. We need to select this from this visual script right here, right? And we're going to just let it be called the player.vs. That's the file name for visual scripting. And I'm going to hit create, and it's going to bring us into the visual scripting. Okay, so, and then once again, just down in the hierarchy here, this is all associated with your player. And so again, you're thinking about it like an actual object in Pixel Game Maker where you have your action programs, basic settings, move settings, all within a player folder or container. That's what you're looking at these. These are the folders, and then these are all the stuff that's inside the folder. Okay, so the first action is going to be called wait. I'm just going to change the name. We go to assign animation, and then we're just going to click on wait. So that's going to be this animation. We also want to make sure that this is the initial action. I'm pretty sure it is, but just in case, you can click on initial action. Now, the next thing we want is we want a move action. So this one's called move, and the assigned animation is going to be move. And then the last one we want is we'll do a jump. And you could also do a fall and things like that, but I'm just going to do jump. Or actually, I will do fall, actually. And I'm going to give this one air. And then the next one we're going to have is we're going to have fall. You want to separate jump and fall because you usually have some different logics that are going on through both of these. And what we're going to do here is instead of say play air, we're going to say keep previous animation. And that's going to keep the jump animation, all right? Now, you might want to set a real one. I'm just showing this off basically, because if you do move and you fall off a thing, it will be keeping your running animation. So this is just for showcasing purposes that I would click this. All right, so let's start linking these up. We have an action link right here. We're going to go to is there input? Then we're going to select from a new input. So that might have been too fast. Let me slow down. You go to add an element, you right click, or you click on this and you click a new input condition. Then you click on the input condition, and this is where you can set it. You have your release key, or you can have 4 of any key types. Well, since we are moving, we can definitely do this. I'm going to say no on up and no on down. But we are going to use left key and right key for this. And it's when it's being pressed. So that is, if you're holding it down, that's what's going to trigger it. And so that's really all that we need in order to test this. Now for the link back to wait. And instead of doing that, actually, I'm going to create a shortcut and then bring this right here and add a link right here. And the link for this, I'm just going to simply do was no input being pressed. Okay. Now I just want to go to my player, make sure that, or it's actually the base settings. Nope, it's the move and jump settings. I want to make sure that my left and right key are set, which they are not right now. So I want to go left and right. So now they are set, and we should be able to play this out, actually. And let's actually do that. Let's test this logic so far. Let's go to play here, game scene, and under the object root node of the base layer, I'm going to instantiate, and we're going to instantiate a player. And one thing is you can see our collision is already messed up. So let's just real quickly go back into the player. Let's grab this collision and let's just move it back up right now. Okay, I'm gonna save it. Now we can play test, and we should be able to walk around. Yep. And then stop. Perfect. Okay. So now let's go back to visual scripting and finish setting this up. We're gonna go from move and wait to jump. Okay. So we're going to say action, and then we're going to go back to input. So if there was an input, we're going to say that the condition of the input is a registered key of space, and we want it to do the moment pressed. And here we have some acceptable frames. This is an input buffer, basically. This is only 1, so that means it's got to be really quick the last time you pressed it, because it's not saving hardly anything, saving 1 frame. Okay, and then that's going to take us to jump. Jump is associated with air already. Now we're going to go to action settings right here. We're going to say this is a jump. So it's going to actually do the jump. And then that's really all we have to do right here. We're going to take this link. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste this link and put it to jump as well. So now both wait and move will go to jump. And then we want the jump to go to fall. And we want this to happen on a condition when the jump is at the top. So this means when the jump has reached its max height, then it's going to go down. Well, it's going to trigger right when it stops leaving its max height. We're going to add that right there, and then it's going to go to fall. We'll bring this shortcut out here, and then we're going to go like this. We're going to say that when the wall contact, this is of an other object, I think. We need the tile contact. There we go. And I believe it's when it's the bottom of the player. We're going to add that one, and then this should go back to wait. So we should be able to jump now. Let's try it. Perfect. And then we go back to wait, and there we go. And you can see that we have animations, and that one's not playing. There we go. And you can see that something is messed up with the left versus the right. The right works. So let's go back over here and just verify that our animation sets are set up correctly. And if you remember when I was showing you the left and the right, I unchecked left and I never rechecked it. So that is why that bug was happening. Now replay now, this, and boom, it works just perfect. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, you can comment below, or you can come to the Discord where I have a beta channel out that you can ask questions during it. And so with that said, I'll see you at the next video.